Welcome to the Parent Light with Jennifer Peaster and Wendy Sexton, both mentors here at the Ascension School of Spirituality. We're really excited to be here with you guys and um, to help shed some light and maybe lighten the load of all that's entailed in parenting from all angles, whatever is needed at this time. So thanks for letting us be here.
Yeah, welcome. So, are
Um,
you going to start today? Are you going to pull a topic?
Yeah, so I've got the topic jar today. Um, got some things in here, and if this is your first time, if you're new, or if you're back, welcome back. We're just together, got some topics that we each have a jar, so that we can pull something to see, what is it that we need um, to shed some light on. And we definitely welcome if any of you have things that are really pulling at your heartstrings or, things that you feel like you've tried every way you can and you're just not sure how to make things move a little smoother in any particular area of life, please comment, let us know. We'd love to add um, the ideas that you'd like to hear about. So we'll see what comes up today. Um, it's going to mix up and just randomly pull whatever comes out and let's see what it says. Um, so what I pulled for today is morning routine. So how we get our days started. So Jennifer, what does that mean to you, knowing that we're in a spectrum of life? What's the first thing that comes to you about your morning routines?
Well, I think about that if there is some routine in it, that helps me on the days that I'm a little sleepier or maybe a little anxious about the day. Like the morning routine can really help me. And I don't do it all the time for sure. But I know for me personally, it helps me ground my day and start it off on a good foot. And I know when my kids were young, it was essential to catching the bus.
Mhm.
They had to know that if they hadn't had breakfast by a certain time, they were going to be running to the bus stop. And just just giving them some routine of what works for them. Like they didn't all do the exact same thing, but they, like how do you get dressed? How do you do that before you eat or after you eat? And what are you most comfortable with? And that they kind of had to discover. So like I was thinking about how our children are learning how to develop routines, and it's kind of our job to help them notice, maybe reflect back. Like I noticed that it's a lot harder to eat if you haven't already gotten dressed because you're just too sleepy, or or maybe you spill things every time you're eating breakfast, so maybe you should get dressed after breakfast. So that's the kind of thoughts that come to me first. How about you, Wendy? What?
Um, yeah, for us, for myself, I've never been a morning person. I'm more of I'd like to sleep to the last minute and then get up, which isn't necessarily the best thing, but it's part of what I know about myself. I'm more of a night owl. So for me, actually, part of my morning routine starts the night before, of making sure that we have um, lunch is packed if they're going to pack that day, and that I know kind of what breakfast is going to be, and um, sometimes even getting clothes laid out the night before, so that it takes some of that morning anxiousness out of the way, um, because trying to cram in a lot as being a working mom and making sure all the kids get out the door so I can get out the door. Um, and it fluctuates a bit depending on my schedule is not always exactly the same day to day, but I do like to kind of keep it similar. Um, but for me, it's learning the kids, like how they're waking up. from day to day. And sometimes they get right up and sometimes they don't want to get out of bed. And learning to add, I've learned adding a little more playfulness in the morning. So sometimes I've got to kind of shift my personality. And I think of like Mrs. Doubtfire, where she, just has that fun voice and that fun animated play. And so sometimes I've just got to become almost like a cartoon character. And when I start being goofy, then they start getting a little more lighthearted and they're not so bummed out about having to go to school. So that's been and it's not that I do it a lot or all the time, but when that part of me, remembers, oh yeah, if we get a little more playful, then they're not going to be um, quite as cranky in the morning, and things are going to go smoother for all of us. So that's one of my ways to try to shift the energy when it's a tough day.
That sounds great. Like that, like that's, helping them and shifting the energy. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thought that came to me is that for me, I am a morning person, but at the same time, I always made sure I was up before the kids, because I needed a little quiet time before the hustle bustle of everybody trying to get out the door. So, and that made a big difference to me. And but the time that was the hardest is with newborns, because then I wasn't sleeping all night, right? I was getting up, and so maybe I just got back to sleep. And to help that, we discovered after several kids that if my husband took over in the morning routine while I was had a very young newborn, that helped tremendously because he was more alert, and that made a big difference just to put him in charge for a while.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Um, for us, that wasn't an option because my husband went to work so early. He was really good and he would be there to try to get up in the middle of the night with the babies when he could. But I always knew how early he had to get up. He would, be leaving by 4 a.m. So, um, so that was kind of a hard thing for us. And I imagine, and I'm fortunate to have him, and to have a partner. Um, but that just made me think of like, wow, I wonder, a single parent, how they, manage that if there's not somebody to offset that. So, um, yeah, just a curiosity and kind of something that just gives me so much respect for any single parents that are, you know, doing this as a one-man show, whether you're mom or dad. Um, Kudos to you because it's hard to be the 24/7 on person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it seems like, well, I feel like we all, even with a partner, need help. So any support, like sometimes kids really take on some of the responsibilities. They, sometimes you have that mature child that just, you know,
Right.
just is naturally a leader kind of to the other kids, but sometimes you don't. So, um, yeah,
Yeah. And that makes me think of, there's lots of different um, parenting philosophies and ways amongst different households and different cultures. And um, we really started from an early time of, once they were big enough to take their plate to the sink to do that. And then when they were a little bigger to put it in the dishwasher. They don't even still do it all the time now. I need lots of reminders. That's part of one of the roles as being a parent. But I would have other parents that would say, "Oh, they're only little ones. It's a privilege to do it for them," and that's beautiful too. But it's finding what really works for you. You know, and especially if you don't have other adult helpers, I think the kids really like. And if I think about it, the younger they are, they want to do the dishes. You remember when you're like pulling stills up to the sink when they're 2 and 3 because they just want to play in the water and they're doing dishes, but you have to clean them later because they're just playing. But, I think it really is. I think sometimes we take for granted as adults that kids are capable of quite a bit more sometimes than what we give them credit for. So, I think testing the waters and seeing, oh, maybe they can pour their milk in their cereal, or maybe they can set the table, or, finding ways um, that are fun and inviting. And I think, just allowing that to help us set the routines and find who's good at what, or what they like.
Yeah, that totally, I agree with that. Especially things that are just really hard to do, like where can they, um, hard for you, like if there's something that's more challenging. And I think routines help in spaces that are more challenging, and part of that can be getting your children to do part of that routine, or yeah. And it does feel like when you cooperate like that and work together, it does feel good.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it helps build connection, that when they see they're helping you, um, it just makes for a lighter morning, a lighter atmosphere when, if one parent or caregiver takes on a lot of responsibility, um, it can feel very heavy. And so then we can feel really stressed or any kind of emotions, and they notice that. So I think it's, you know, sometimes it can be looked at that, they shouldn't have to work so young, but what if it's really not work? What if it's building those loving connections and seeing how we support each other from an early age? So,
Well said. Yeah.
so I feel like that's a good place to wrap it up today. How do you feel?
Yeah, I felt the same. Like there's so much more. This is really just the beginning of a conversation. I mean,
Mhm.
we're just kind of introducing it. But I think this is good for today. So we want to thank you for joining us, and remember that you're already a better parent than you think. That's all today from Jennifer and Wendy. Bye bye.
You.